Okay, so we are now recording. We'd like to welcome each of you to our E-Rate newbie session. So this session is designed for those of you who are brand new to the E-Rate process. And literally, we are going to start from the very, very beginning and explain to you exactly where this program came from. And as we work our way from session 1 through session 3, you will understand the program and how you file for it, where the funding comes from, so forth and so on. And so prior to a couple years ago, we didn't break out our boot camp training into newbie sessions and those training for experienced folks. And we had noticed a lot of questions from the new folks and a lot of bored faces on the experienced folks. So we thought, you know, we need to rethink this to better meet your needs. And so that's why we've broken this out to a longer session for our new folks, and then just a quick overview for those who've been doing it, you know, 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And so that's kind of how we're focusing our training right now. So we're going to start with our session 1, and it's going to take you to the very beginning of E-Rate and how it started, and then we'll just progress our way through for sessions 1, 2, and 3. We have some other more specific training on our website. You would also probably be interested in attending as well, such as filing a 470 for WAN renewals, and also our mini bid and category 2 training as well. All right, so let's move right into this. Today we're going to talk about the history of E-Rate, school connectivity so you can understand where our funding comes from, EPC, which is the portal, what types of funding, and what eligible services does E-Rate cover. Also, we are recording this session. It will go on to our website. Please ask any questions in the chat box, and then we'll stop and answer all of your questions at the end of our session, as well as allow you to unmute yourself and ask questions aloud as well. All right, first of all, let's talk about the universal service. So universal service, you can read here, is based on the principle that all Americans should have access to a baseline of telecommunications service. This was the founding principle in the Communications Act of 1934, and then it established, the FCC established the Universal Service Fund in 1997. And basically, you have Congress to thank for all of this with the Telecommunications Act. And in 1996, that Act from 34 was rewritten, and you have a universal service, which is now known what is E-Rate is what we now know with this universal service. And so basically from 1996 on, it's something that we now know as E-Rate, and it's how we get our money from the federal government. So there are 4 funds that fall under universal services, 4 programs, and schools and libraries are the one that we're concerned with. That's E-Rate. But this fund also works with the rural health organizations. They get a big chunk of money, Low-Income America, and high cost for eligible service providers. So each of these groups get a chunk of this money as well. So E-Rate, which helps schools and libraries, is a discount program. Now, a lot of schools, when they come on board, especially new charters, they think of this as a grant. It is not a grant. It is a discount program, okay? And so you apply for this funding and you get a discount rate, and we'll explain how that discount rate is formulated in just a few minutes. But it's called an educational rate, so we call it E-Rate for short. So here's how it all feeds together in the big circle. So Congress enacted the Act, so that's the big blue circle on the outside. The FCC oversees the money. USAC was hired by the FCC, the Universal Service Administrative Company, and you'll hear us call them USAC, USAC, administers the program for the FCC, and then you, the schools, are the applicants. So you apply to USAC to get the money. The FCC oversees the money, and of course Congress enacted it all and allows it all to happen. So that's kind of the picture of where we all fall within the program itself. And you guys are the applicants. So you're going to apply for the money. USAC is who you're going to send your applications to. And then nothing happens unless the FCC says it can. Excuse me. And I think Adam is up next.
Yeah, I'm up next. So the next slide is basically about if you're eligible. And so if you are a K-12 public or private school or a public library, and your main purpose is to educate eligible students and the public. So am I applying for eligible services, which we're going to go into a little bit more. There are certain things that are considered eligible services, so you have to make sure you stay within that realm. And you have to make sure that those services are going to be used on the school or the campus only. So you can't kind of go outside of those building walls in that sense for the eligible services. So as I had just mentioned a little bit, the eligible service list is sent out every year, and it basically states, hey, this is what is eligible for you to file for E-rate. And it basically comes out really around now, hopefully, for this next coming up funding year. And it sets what is eligible and also the timing for the upcoming funding window. So the next logical question is how much can you get? And that depends on two different factors. So the level of your NSLP, which is the National School Lunch Program, and your percentage of students who are eligible for that helps to decide your discount rate. And then also the status of your school, whether you are urban or rural. So here's a nice chart of versus your income and then your category 1 and 2, and we're going to get into what those different things as far as category 1 and 2, what you may or may not know about it. And this gives a good overview as far as there's a little bit higher of a discount in some areas for urban or rural, but only in your less than 1%. Everything else is pretty much even now, and it basically goes from 20 to 90% of a reimbursement from USAC and the federal government. And then I think, Roxy, correct me if I'm wrong, this would be a good time to say that for North Carolina, DPI does cover your undiscounted portion as well.
That is correct.
And we will get into that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yes. So for most of the United States, and actually in prior years, prior to 2015 in North Carolina, for E-rate, you applied for X amount of dollars either in a Category 1 service, which is a recurring service like Internet or WAN, or Category 2, which we'll talk about more in just a minute, which is your internal connection, such as an access point or a switch or something like that. And you applied for one of these two sets or both, and you would get your discount rate if you were approved, and then you would have to pay the rest out of pocket. So if you applied for, let's say, $50,000 in network equipment and you were a 50% discount, so you would have to pay 50% of that bill, and USAC would cover the other 50% of that bill. So that's how these discount rates work. Luckily in North Carolina, we have legislative funding that covers the non-discount rates for you, and we'll talk about those in a little bit. But just so you understand how the rest of the United States works is the schools and school systems and libraries have to pay the non-discounted portion out of pocket. So you can see where a poor school, so you can see these high percentages down here, 75% to 100% of students eligible for the National School Lunch Program get a high discount on Category 1 and Category 2, meaning they're a very poor school district, so they're going to get, or a school or a library. So they get a 90% on Category 1, so they would only pay 10% out of pocket. Or an 85% on Category 2, so they would pay 15% out of pocket. So you can see that the higher the poverty level, the lower the percent out of pocket you are. And then, of course, in North Carolina, you pay nothing out of pocket. And we'll talk about that more.
All right.
But that's how the program works.
And then if you are a library system, you are based on the NSLP of the public school district in which your main branch or your main administrative office of the library is located. And then you determine the total number of students in your district, divide that first number by the second, and to get the percentage of students eligible for your NSLP. And then you combine the two we just talked about, your urban or rural of the library system, and you find your discount based. So it's basically based on the school district of your main office.
Now, I'm going to interrupt Adam again. I want to make clear that library systems in North Carolina do have to pay their percent out of pocket.
Thanks, Rox. All right, so what'll it pay for? And this is where we're going to get a little bit more into your Category 1 and Category 2 designations. And so your Category 1 is broadband services from the service provider to the school or library. And a nice way to think about it is, especially too, if you have different locations, and that can also be roped into your internet or your WAN that runs to each of the buildings. And so I like to think about it, Category 1, WAN. And then Category 2 is the actual network equipment and the services for the management and maintenance, but remember, it has to be eligible equipment used for the connectivity within your school or library. So think of it almost as kind of more internal connections for Category 2 versus Category 1. And so here's some Category 1 examples. If your district or your charter may still be running on a cable modem or Ethernet to your building, some of these other things, I don't know that they're maybe necessarily applicable to you, but microwave or MPLS, broadband over power lines, satellite service, least dark fiber, etc. So those are just kind of some examples to give you of what they consider to be Category 1 connections.
Most of you will never file for Category 1 because you are, if you're a charter, you're a single location. And until you expand to have multiple campuses on different locations, you would not file for Category 1 because you wouldn't need to. You would just have single internet coming into your building, and we take care of that for you. If you are here and you're on a school and you're in a school system, of course a school system has multiple buildings, multiple locations. So you do file for a WAN and you will file for a Category 1. So you're filing a 470 and then you're filing your 471 for your WAN. So this is super important for you.
All right, and some examples for Category 2 are your network cabling, your access points, switches, routers, your MIBS, which is Managed Internal Broadband Service, and that's kind of like an overall management system of, say, a Wi-Fi or internal, your Wi-Fi system. Your repair and upkeep of eligible hardware, big asterisk on that. Again, you can't file for E-rate on the repair, upkeep, or even on the equipment itself if it's not on the eligible services list. UPSs, again, with some certain kind of restrictions as far as eligible hardware there, which we can take any questions if you do have on that. And wire and cable maintenance and basic technical support.
So basically, this next section is a lot of the buzzwords that we'll be using when we speak with you or in our training, in our handbook, things you'll find on our webpage, and just trying to simplify it of the things that matter to you. So our first key term here is funding year. The funding year is not a fiscal year. It is a funding year. And it begins on July 1st of the year we're now in. So we are now in funding year, 22 when this ends. So July 1st of 22 to June 30th of 2023. So you'll hear us talking, what funding year are we speaking of? It's July 1 to June 30. Another one of our beloved acronyms is FRN, and that's a funding request number. Whenever you file for different applications within the system, you're going to be referencing back what was the FRN. The funding request number, it has line items that includes details and costs associated with each eligible and ineligible product and service you request. Yes, you will sometimes have to refer to the ineligible portion of your quote or your project. And each funding request is assigned a specific number or FRN. One big term that you'll always need to know is your BEN, your Build Entity Number. USAC assigns a unique number to each entity that participates in the Schools and Libraries program. This number is assigned by USAC. I think it's incremental. So he who got in first and put their entities in have those 5-digit numbers. They're up to 6 or 7 by now, but USAC calls this a Build Entity Number. If you are a new school, a new charter coming on board, you will need to get a BEN, Build Entity Number, and that telephone number there belongs to the Client Services Bureau. Note it someplace, put it in your contacts on your cell phone. They are very helpful. They will get you started with your BEN.
And if I can add to what Sue was saying, if you are in a school district or a library system, you're going to have a parent BEN, which is the main entity, and then you'll have child BENs or child entities. So for a school district, that'll be your main district number, like blank, blank, blank school system or school district, and then each of your schools and administrative offices, your bus garage, your whatever will have BENs as well, and they're your child entities. So everybody has to have a BEN. And then for a library, your main branch will be your library system number, and then every branch has to have a BEN as well.
Yep.
So parent and children.
And the management of that is important. If you're a big school district and you're starting construction on a new elementary school that's going to open in 23 or 24, you need to open up an entity for that. If your school is expanding and they're on campus, you may need to add an annex to that entity. But these are all things that part of what makes a BEN, and not our Ben. He's Adam.
Charter schools, you have annexes, not parent and children. So, and that's the way North Carolina recognizes charters. You're not recognized as a district, just one entity. So you will never have more than one build entity number. But it is important that we add any additional buildings that you add, if you build another campus, etc., as an annex. So that's very, very important that you get them added in there into the system so that, you know, you can have the kids added for the Category 2 budget, you can add them for the WAN, so forth and so on.
Cool. Filing window. Filing windows are what turn our hair gray. Okay? A filing window is a specified time. USAC has rules. From date X to date Y, you can do this work. And then from date Y plus whatever till date Z, you can do this work. So this time frame is always defined when you can file these applications. An example, a Form 470 was mentioned earlier. They can be filed July 1st, all the way up until they decide the next filing window is going to open. And that filing window is known as the 471, typically opens in January and closes in March. And then we all go on vacation for like April, May, and June. No, just kidding. I don't think that would ever happen, but yes, so these filing windows are defined by USAC. They're not dates we make up, folks. If you get an email from us, they're real. A SPIN. A SPIN is a service provider identification number. Basically, what these numbers do is they manage providers. You have a BEN, you're a billed entity number. Service providers have a SPIN. Service providers can have more than one SPIN because of mergers, acquisitions. They perform different business functions. For example, a company like Verizon might have their whole network division that builds out WANs and connections, you know, in geographical areas. They are different than the Verizon Wireless that you get your hotspot from, which is still different from the Verizon that might bring you DSL service or any of those other WAN connections that Adam mentioned earlier. A SPAC. This is an interesting one because this is, again, for service providers, but it's something that we have to pay attention to that makes sure that we're doing business with service providers that USAC recognizes. A SPAC is a service provider annual certification. It's an FCC form that the providers must fill out and file annually to certify that they're in compliance with the rules and guidelines as USAC has put them out, put out there. They have to be filed before USAC will pay any invoices. And we'll get into that whole invoicing section, at a later time in teaching you guys. EPC, I believe Roxy and Adam both mentioned this earlier. That is known as the E-Rate Productivity Center. This came into play a few years ago. It allows for you to manage applications electronically. So it's a portal for the Schools and Libraries program. Applicants, consultants, service providers participating in the E-Rate program use this to manage every facet of the program. Submitting forms, answering inquiries, submitting questions. Basically, it's, manages the whole program. FCDL. Everybody looks forward to these. This is your funding commitment decision letter. After an application has been reviewed by the Program Integrity Assurance Group, known as PIA, an applicant will be notified of the status of their application via the FCDL. Basically, it's going to be a letter that summarizes what your application looked like. You've been approved for this one, for this amount for that, this amount for that, and then there'll be a spreadsheet also that's associated. Very long, usually this thick, but it summarizes what your application asked for and what USAC has approved, what you're going to be funded for. So some key forms. There are plenty of others, trust me, but the key ones that you need to be concerned with, for those schools that do have WANs, you'll have a 470. As Roxy mentioned, North Carolina provides the internet service, so you don't need to put out a 470 or RFP bid for your internet service. If your schools purchase Category 2 hardware and use the state master contracts, the state has already filed the 470s, and you're able to just refer to those. But that is for those groups that, again, may have to do their WAN or are stepping outside of state master contract, not something you want to do because there's a whole lot of bad things that happen after that. But there's a 470 is the initial form. 471 is the form that's filed between January and March. And this is where you're actually applying for the equipment, for the services that your school will be performing for certain projects beginning the following school year. This is where you tell them, everything about the project, what the equipment type is, who the vendor is, all those sort of fun things. The 486 is a response to what I mentioned earlier, the FCDL. Once you have been committed, your funding has been committed for your application, you'll file a 486, and this tells USAC, yep, thank you very much. We're going to take the money and go buy all this gear and equipment. Then there's the 472/474. The one form is for the schools to submit the invoices that they paid for services, and the other is used by the vendors to submit the invoices for services and equipment they provided to the schools. With the State Master Contract, we have put a stipulation in there that we ask all vendors to provide that billing directly to USAC so that there's no additional out-of-pocket costs that you're waiting for reimbursement from. So for the most part, you'll be dealing with, the vendors will be dealing with the 474s. Very rarely will you be dealing with having to file a 472. And this is just really showing this in another way, so to speak, but you start at the beginning. You begin a committed bidding process, your RFP. An RFP always runs alongside a 470 based on the size and scope of the project and your local and state procurement rules. Once you have kept all those open for a period of time and gone through and reviewed all the bids that came in, you can file a 471. This allows you to apply for discounts and what the description of services are. Again, you've received your FCDL. You can then file your 46, which starts the service start date, as well as SIPA compliance. And SIPA is the Children's Internet Protection Act. If you are a part of the E-rate process, you must be SIPA compliant. That's not to say for those schools that are new that you started day one as SIPA compliant. There is an option to choose that you are working on SIPA compliance, but you have to acknowledge that that's where you're headed. The 472 I mentioned, it also has this neat little acronym called BARE. It's the Billed Applicant Reimbursement. And what that form is, like I said, is used very rarely in the case with North Carolina because of the program put in place by the legislature to fund E-rate-based initiatives back to the schools. Most of your service providers will be filing the 474 on your behalf. Again, it's all discounted. If you're at a 70% discount rate, the service provider will bill that 70% directly to the USAC, and you'll just get a bill for your 30%. The 498 is a form that is required by USAC in the event they ever have to reimburse you. So if you ever have to file a 472, that 498 is done by your financial officer, and it's once and it's done. And I believe I return this to Roxy.
Yes. Questions. If you have any questions, you can put those in the chat, or I believe you can unmute yourself and ask those out loud. We did have one question. Will you have access to this slide deck? Yes. It will be posted along with the recording of the presentation on our website by sometime tomorrow. I can get the slide deck up faster than I can the recording, so yes, you will have both of them. Are there any other questions? So hopefully you've seen the process by which you will go through to obtain any of the funding that you might be looking for. I don't see any questions right now. Okay, so what's coming up next? On November 3rd, we're going to talk about funding year 22 and the new Form 470. On November 8th, you'll have session 2, and November 15th, you'll have session 3. And all of those sessions are on our website for you to register for. Another person has asked, let's go back to a question, for Cat 2, is support for the APs included? Can you be more specific about your support? Are you talking about maintenance, basic maintenance. Extreme access point support to manage. I don't know.
Is that a PMIC?
I think it might be. Does it come as a license, Karen? Karen, does that portal come as a license? Yes, it comes as a license. Okay, then that would be yes. That would be eligible. Okay, here's another question. Where do I look on the eligible devices and eligible repair and upkeep list? Okay, so the eligible services list has not been posted for 22 yet. It is still with USAC, I'm sorry, with the FCC. You will find it posted on our website as well as USAC's website. And let me show you where to find that. I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to open up a tab, and I'm going to usac.org/E-rate. And if this is just the home page, I went to usac.org and E-rate, clicked on E-rate, and you'll see resources, eligible services list. And once you click on eligible services list, you'll see those listed here. So 2022 has not been posted yet, but as soon as it's being approved by the FCC, it will be posted here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to post this link in the chat to everyone, and you can copy that list. We'll also post it on our website when it becomes available, but that's where you can find it on USAC's site. Hopefully it should be any day now. Okay, here's another question. If we own our own fiber, do we skip the Form 470? Yes, you do not have to file. If you own your own fiber, you don't have to post a 470. For older APs where support has expired, can you purchase that support with Cat2 or purchase new APs? I think you can do either. You may do either. You may purchase new APs with support, or you may purchase licenses to go with those older APs. Very good questions. Okay, so let's go back to our presentation. Okay, and I think we wanted to share, do we want to share our handbook?
We can certainly do that.
Okay, here's another one. If my charter was using E-rate before, do I need to call for my bin? Actually, we can look your bin up for you, April, if you did it before. If you just put the name of your charter in the chat, one of us will look it up for you and pop it up there to you. Okay, I'm going to let Sue. Sue, can you? I don't know if it would be easier for me to pull it up or you. Just a second. Let me pull this up. Can you share from your screen? If I stop sharing, do you have the ability to share?
I can certainly try.
Okay.
Let's see if I can get that from you. I think.
Stop. Sue's going to try and share.
Just got to find my mouse. Running around 3 screens.
We have a tool called our E-rate handbook that we're going to share with you. We just finished redoing it, Sue mostly, for 2022, and it has a plethora of E-rate information for you where you can find a lot of question answers. So you might have questions, this probably has your answer for you. So if Sue can share, I'm going to I don't know if she has that capability.
It is all grayed out on me. All I can do is share a file.
Okay, I'm going to pop it up then.
I had it all set and ready.
Share my screen. And then let Sue talk.
Yeah, so basically what we've put together, and all I was doing was updated, so please, those that came before me built a great tool. In this tool, you will find all the steps and all the references that you might need in a single click. So you can see here the different pieces that are in the table of contents, from digital learning plans, a 470, what's a 486, what does SIPA mean, what's an IDER, you know, why would I need to worry about a red light, things of that nature. If any of those things were to come up, you will find the references here. So we have an introduction and getting started tab that basically just gets you what information do you need, it tells you about school connectivity. It's going to be that, oh yeah, they talked about type of a guide. The links here will bring you to the latest versions that might be on our webpage, that might be in USAC, that could be, you know, anywhere that we have found references to help all of you get through these processes. We're here, so it's not like we're running away from you and saying, here, use this. But just as a guide and, like I said, a reference tool, really has a lot of information in there. If you're not sure if something's on, you've heard about an ESL, but you can't remember what it's called, there's a section in here about 470 procurement that will actually then talk more about it. Under the resources tab, we've put together a listing of resources where you might find information about those various entities and things as it would be associated with E-rate. The forms guide goes through, you saw that slide, yes, I stole it, but I added a couple of other ones that do matter as far as, you know, funding's concerned. We've got a glossary of terms from USAC. The highlighted one will take you right to their page, which is alphabetical order of everything under the planet that has to do with E-rate. We've put together our own, what I keep calling FLAs and TLAs. So if you hear us talk about, you know, an ACD or SL or an SMC, they are there. By no means is this an exhaustive list, but these are the things that you'll hear from us during various times in your application process. Biggest one, contact us. As we are awaiting a fourth member of our team, but this is how you get us. Any one of us can help you in any, you know, part of your process. We do right now have the state divvied up, east and west. Since I'm from New Jersey, I don't know really what that means. I just know that I'm east because the ocean is 20 minutes from me, and Charlotte was west of me because I lived there for a couple months. So I know what schools what regions I support. Adam and Roxy support the Western regions and charters, but hopefully, you know, we're not looking to have this handbook replace us, but it is definitely a resource guide for y'all.
Any questions? I put the link in the chat. Did we take the key off of it? Is it public yet?
I do not believe it's public yet. The last piece was the resources and charter schools.
Okay, so guys, you have the link. If it asks you for a key code, yeah, it's not public yet. So I tell you what, we're going to post it on our website.
I believe the 2021 handbook is still on the website. Adam would know best.
It is, yes.
Yeah, the 2021 is still, yeah.
Yeah, and it's not that the information is bad or, you know, wrong. It just has some references to different funding years. There haven't been a significant number of changes in the program. The last modernization order was already registered in that handbook. Really, it was just a refresh. It was just, you know, change some of the words, make it a little consistent, things of that nature.
I also have just shared with you our website for those of you who are not familiar with it, and I put the link in our chat as well. So our homepage is our newsletters and updates that we send only when we have something we need to tell you. And we usually send that out via email and then copy it over to our website. So if you are not in our email list, Sue sends out to hers, Adam sends out to the charters on the west side, and I send out to the LEAs. And then when Sue gets our fourth person, she's going to be handing over charters on the east side. And when we say east and west, we're pretty much split up by regions 1, 2, 3, and 4. We call that the east. So the Sandhills, north, central, northeast, southeast. And then over the west, we call that Piedmont Triad, southwest, northwest, and west. We have Category 2 information. Our training is here, and there's the Fall 2021, which is what we're doing now, and it has the registration links, as well as that's where we are going to post the slide decks and our recordings. And then resources for you, documents, SEPA guidance. You need to understand, especially if you're new to school, what it means to be SEPA compliant or be working toward that. And that's a really good piece in our handbook as well. News briefs that come from USAC every week are posted here. Super important for you to read. And then all of our old archive stuff is here as well. So we like for you to have one central place for all of our information. And so we try and post it here on the website. And then our handbook is basically your resource guide. So,
Roxy, the last year's, I just made sure it's under, if you hover over resources and go to documents, that's where you guys can find this year's E-Rate handbook right there, the very top link.
Perfect. And we will replace that as soon as we transfer over, excuse me, and make live the 2022, and then we'll move the 21 to archives. Okay? All right. So I know we scheduled this out for a long time. We didn't know if we'd have 30 or 40 people and how long this would take. So any questions before we close out for the day? You are welcome to contact any of us, any of the three of us, with any questions that you might have. We welcome them. So there will be a test.
Now all these people are like, oh wait, I was doing the...
Yeah. Okay.
What is the most important thing that you should bring to training class? That's your first question. Any takers? If you said chocolate, you're correct.
Okay, somebody said, Paul, we were just kidding, no test. Somebody said to go back to the contacts page. So here's the contacts page. And somebody said talk more about the DPI covering the undiscounted portion. So we have legislative funds from the North Carolina General Assembly for school connectivity, which is our group. That is E-Rate and cybersecurity. And what this money allows us to do is cover your non-discounted portion for Category 2 and WAN. And it also allows us to pay a small stipend to the charters who choose not to be on our free internet. So basically what we have set up here in North Carolina is we have free internet for every school, every district, every charter. It's called NCREN, and you choose whether or not you want to come on. Basically, we have just a couple charters in North Carolina who have chosen not to come on to the free internet. So we use E-Rate as a state to help offset that cost, because you can imagine how many millions of dollars that costs to provide that. So that's one thing we have in our pot for North Carolina schools. The second thing we have is with E-Rate, thanks to legislative dollars, we can pay the non-discounted portion for your WAN. So if you have multiple schools and you have our internet coming into one site, we will pay the non-discounted portion of that WAN link. You apply for E-rate for your WAN. Whatever your non-discounted portion is, we come in and pick up the difference. Whether you're a charter with multiple schools, if you're a big charter, or you're a school district. Okay, so we have legislative funds to help with that. Category 2, we have state master contracts. We have over 86 resellers for everything that's on the eligible services list, from Cambian to Aruba, you name it, it's all on there, and we'll talk about that later, but we have everybody listed on our website under Category 2. All you have to do is go through the mini bid process, prove that you give all the vendors a fair shake, order what you need, get funded. We pay the non-discounted portion. So within your Category 2 budget for your school, which we'll talk about how that's determined, order what you need, we'll pay the non-discounted portion with our Category 2 budgets.
Well, we reimburse.
We'll pay the difference. So let's say, like I said, you order $50,000 worth of equipment, you're a 50% discount school. We put the other 50% into your bank account. It comes from our finance to your finance, and then you pay the bills with that money. Okay? So our legislature has given us the money to enable you to do that. All you have to do is use our state master contracts for that. So that money is available to you. If you own your own fiber and you have to pay fiber maintenance, we give you a stipend to help cover that as well. So we have some school districts that are huge. They own their own fiber. Well, not necessarily huge, but they're in places where it's best to own their own fiber. So we can have a small stipend we can pay to help cover your fiber maintenance. So we have legislative funds with school connectivity to help pay that. Okay, so I have another question. Will the option for Starlink be available via E-rate? I cannot answer that. I do know that, and we're talking wireless, is that correct? Yeah. I think I've heard of some districts applying, not in North Carolina, for this before. So I'm thinking, there's a possibility that that could happen. If there's no other connectivity possible for your schools. Now, certainly it's not for home, but if there's an issue at the schools and there's no other connectivity possible, I have heard of other districts across the U.S. using Starlink. We'd need to investigate that. Any other questions? Okay, well, we're gearing up for getting everything started for next funding year for 22. So please watch your emails. If you are not receiving the emails you think you need to be receiving, or if somebody else is getting them and you want to get them, just shoot one of us an email. We're always firstname.lastname@dpi.nc.gov, and we'll make sure the right people get the emails. Also, if you are not the person in the E-rate Productivity Center, EPIC, or EPC, if you like to call it, then we need to make sure you work with one of us to get you in there if you're going to be responsible for E-rate at your school. Okay? All right, folks, we appreciate you joining us, and we will see you at our next training session. Have a good day.
Toodles.
Bye.